My name is Celia, and I'm 32 years old. I've always been the forgotten middle child, sandwiched between my successful siblings and constantly living in their shadow. Last Christmas, I watched as my parents gave my sister Natalie a luxury European vacation while beaming with pride. When my turn came, I opened my gift to find used cleaning supplies and a plastic housekeeper name tag. As my family erupted in laughter, something inside me finally broke. For years, I'd felt invisible in my own family. But that night, I decided I deserved more. If you've ever felt undervalued by the people who should love you most, hit that like button and subscribe. As I tell you what happened when I finally decided enough was enough, let me know in the comments if you're watching from a place where family gatherings feel more like punishment than celebration. I grew up in an upper-middle-class neighborhood in suburban Boston, in a large colonial house with a perfectly manicured lawn and a two-car garage. From the outside, we looked like the perfect American family. My father, Richard, is a renowned cardiovascular surgeon at Massachusetts General Hospital. My mother, Diana, was a former beauty queen who transitioned into being the perfect doctor's wife and socialite. She chairs charity galas, belongs to exclusive clubs, and maintains our family's social calendar with military precision. My older brother, Marcus, is 35, a successful investment banker living in London. He visits maybe once a year, but his absence doesn't diminish his status in the family. His achievements are regularly mentioned at family gatherings, his success in the financial world, a constant source of pride for my parents. And then there's my younger sister, Natalie, 28, the undisputed golden child of the family. She followed in my father's footsteps and became a doctor currently finishing her residency in pediatric surgery. She's beautiful, charismatic, and somehow manages to excel at everything she touches. From the moment she was born, she became the center of our family universe. And me, I'm the middle child, the unremarkable one. I'm an elementary school teacher. I teach third grade at a public school in a middle-class neighborhood, a career choice that my parents have never understood or respected. All that education, just to babysit other people's children, my father once commented during a family dinner, not even attempting to lower his voice. Growing up, the differences in how we were treated were subtle at first. When Natalie brought home an A on a test, there would be effusive praise and maybe a special dinner. When I brought home an A, there would be a distracted "good job" from my mother as she continued planning Natalie's ballet recital outfit. I learned early on that my achievements would never measure up no matter how hard I tried. In high school, I threw myself into academics, graduating with a 4.0 GPA and becoming president of the debate team. My parents attended the awards ceremony where I received several honors, but they left early because Natalie had a minor dance competition that evening. "You understand, don't you?" my mother said as they rushed out. "Your sister needs us there for support." College was more of the same. I worked 2 part-time jobs to help pay for expenses, even though my parents could easily afford to support me fully as they did with Natalie. "It builds character," my father explained when I asked why I had to work while my sister didn't. Natalie's medical studies are demanding enough without adding financial stress. I graduated summa cum laude from Boston University with a degree in education. My graduation ceremony was attended by my parents, who complained about the length of the proceedings and left immediately after to prepare for Natalie's end-of-semester party, despite the fact that she hadn't even finished her finals yet. The pattern continued into adulthood. When I secured my first teaching position, my parents responded with lukewarm congratulations. When I was named Teacher of the Year at my school after just 2 years, my parents couldn't attend the ceremony because Natalie had invited friends over for dinner. The comparisons were constant and always unfavorable to me. "Why can't you dress more like your sister? Natalie always makes time for family. Why can't you? Your sister bought us such thoughtful gifts, you should take notes." Even our living situations reflected the disparity. I rent a small but cozy 1-bedroom apartment that I've decorated with care on my teacher's salary. Natalie lives in a luxury condo downtown that our parents helped her purchase as a graduation gift when she finished medical school. She needs to be close to the hospital, they explained. Though I noticed they never offered to help with my rent, despite my school being a 40-minute commute from my apartment. My relationship with Marcus has always been distant. Being 7 years older, he was already heading to boarding school when I was still in elementary. Our interactions are cordial but superficial, limited to major holidays and occasional family events. He seems to exist in a different world entirely, his life of high finance and international travel far removed from my classroom of 8-year-olds. My relationship with Natalie is more complicated. There are moments when she shows genuine sisterly affection, like when she helped me move into my apartment, or when she calls just to chat about something funny that happened at the hospital. But these moments are overshadowed by the times she participates in the family dynamic of diminishing me. She'll laugh along when my father makes jokes about my modest career, or she'll one-up my stories with more impressive ones of her own. I've never been sure if she's even aware of doing it, or if it's just a habit she's developed to maintain her position as the favored child. In my more charitable moments, I recognize that being the golden child comes with its own pressures. Natalie has to maintain perfection to keep her pedestal, while I've long since been written off as the average one. There's a certain freedom in low expectations. But that freedom comes at the cost of constant emotional bruising, of always feeling less than, of never quite belonging in your own family. As December approached last year, I felt the familiar dread building in my stomach. The annual Christmas gathering at my parents' house was an obligation I couldn't escape, despite knowing exactly how it would play out. I had been seeing a therapist for about 6 months at that point, working through my family issues and trying to establish healthier boundaries. Dr. Kaplan had suggested I could decline the invitation, but the thought of the resulting family drama seemed worse than just enduring the day. Family dynamics don't change overnight, she had told me during our session the week before Christmas. But you can change how you respond to them. Remember, you have value regardless of how they treat you. I nodded along, but her words felt hollow against the weight of 3 decades of conditioning. Still, I was trying to implement small changes like not immediately apologizing when my mother criticized me or speaking up when my achievements were dismissed. Despite my modest teacher's salary, I had put considerable thought and expense into my family's Christmas gifts that year. For my father, I had tracked down a rare first edition of his favorite author's book through an online auction site. It had taken months of searching and cost nearly a full paycheck, but I knew it was the kind of thoughtful gift that might finally earn his approval. For my mother, I had created a handcrafted photo album, painstakingly restoring old family photographs and arranging them chronologically with handwritten captions. I had spent countless evenings working on it, hoping she would appreciate the personal touch and the hours of effort. For Natalie, I had purchased an expensive skincare set from a luxury brand she had mentioned wanting, but couldn't justify buying herself, despite her substantial salary. It was the kind of gift that showed I listened to her, that I cared about what she wanted. The night before Christmas Eve, I could barely sleep. My stomach was in knots, and I kept rehearsing potential conversations in my head, preparing responses for the inevitable criticisms and backhanded compliments. By morning, I had dark circles under my eyes that no amount of concealer could fully hide. "You look like you're heading to a funeral, not a family Christmas," my best friend Taylor said when she stopped by to exchange gifts before I left for my parents' house. Taylor had been my roommate in college and had witnessed firsthand the way my family treated me during those years. "Same difference," I replied, attempting a smile that didn't reach my eyes. Taylor squeezed my hand. "Remember what we talked about. You don't have to take their crap. You're an amazing teacher who changes kids' lives every day. That's worth more than all your father's surgeries or your sister's perfect smile." I hugged her tightly, grateful for the reminder. "I'll try to stand up for myself this year. Really." "Text me if it gets bad," she said. "I'll fake an emergency and call you away." I loaded the carefully wrapped gifts into my car and began the 40-minute drive to my parents' house in Brookline. The weather was picture-perfect for Christmas Eve. Light snow falling gently on the already white landscape houses decorated with twinkling lights, families walking together bundled in scarves and mittens. It looked like a scene from a holiday movie, and for a brief moment, I allowed myself to hope that maybe this year would be different. Maybe this would be the Christmas where my parents would see me, really see me, and appreciate who I was, rather than lamenting who I wasn't. As I pulled into the circular driveway of my parents' mansion, that hope dimmed considerably. The house was elaborately decorated as always. Professional-grade white lights outlining every architectural feature, an enormous wreath on the front door, and what appeared to be a new edition life-size nutcracker figures flanking the entrance. The display screamed wealth and perfection, two things my parents valued above all else. I parked beside Natalie's BMW and sat for a moment, gathering my courage. "You are valuable," I whispered to myself, echoing Dr. Kaplan's mantra. "Your worth is not determined by their approval." My mother answered the door in a designer red dress, her hair and makeup flawless as always. She air-kissed my cheek, careful not to smudge her lipstick. "Celia, darling, you're finally here," she said, her eyes quickly scanning my outfit. A green sweater dress that I thought was festive and flattering. Her slight frown told me it didn't meet her standards. "Couldn't you have worn something a bit more special? It's Christmas Eve after all." "And so it begins," I thought. "This is new, Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice light. "I bought it specially for tonight." She replied, clearly unimpressed. "Well, come in before you let all the cold air in." The house smelled of pine and cinnamon, and I could hear Christmas music playing softly in the background. My father was in the living room, drink in hand, chatting with Marcus, who had flown in from London the day before. Celia's here," my father said, glancing up briefly. "There's champagne in the kitchen if you want some." No hug, no "how are you?" Not even a Merry Christmas. Just a directive to fetch my own drink. I swallowed the hurt and forced a smile. "Merry Christmas, Dad. Hi, Marcus." Marcus nodded in acknowledgement, then continued his conversation with our father about some investment opportunity he was considering. I stood awkwardly for a moment before heading to the kitchen to get that champagne. As I poured myself a glass, I heard the front door open again, followed by exclamations of delight. Natalie had arrived. I steeled myself and returned to the living room. Natalie was the center of attention, as always. She wore a stunning red cocktail dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent, her dark hair falling in perfect waves around her shoulders. She was describing some complex surgery she had assisted with, my parents hanging on her every word. "It was touch and go for a while, but Dr. Winters let me close, and the patient is recovering beautifully," she was saying as I entered. "That's our girl," my father beamed, raising his glass in a toast. Following in the old man's footsteps and already impressing the department head. My mother touched Natalie's hair adoringly. "And looking gorgeous while saving lives. How do you manage it all?" I sipped my champagne silently, invisible once again. After a few minutes, my mother turned to me. "Celia, would you mind helping in the kitchen? The caterers need someone to direct them, and you know how busy I am with guests." There weren't any actual guests besides family, but I nodded and retreated to the kitchen. It was a familiar pattern. Natalie got to socialize and be admired while I was assigned practical tasks behind the scenes. The professional catering staff certainly didn't need my direction, but I stayed in the kitchen anyway, making small talk with them as they worked. At least they treated me with basic courtesy. Dinner was served at 7, a formal affair in the dining room, with the good china and crystal. My mother had placed me between Marcus and my Uncle Robert, who was hard of hearing and mainly interested in talking about his golf game. Natalie, of course, was seated between our parents, perfectly positioned to be the center of attention. Throughout the meal, the conversation revolved primarily around Natalie's achievements at the hospital, Marcus's successful year in finance, and my father's challenging surgeries. I tried several times to share a story about one of my students who had overcome a reading disability through a special program I'd developed, but my mother quickly redirected the conversation back to Natalie. "That's nice, dear," she said dismissively. "But did you hear that Natalie might be published in the New England Journal of Medicine? Tell them about your research, sweetheart." As dessert was served, I fell silent, pushing my chocolate mousse around the plate and counting the minutes until the gift exchange. Despite everything, a small part of me still hoped that my carefully selected presents would finally earn me the recognition I craved. That this would be the year my parents would see the thought and love I put into my gifts, and maybe, just maybe, return that love in kind. I couldn't have been more wrong. After dinner, we gathered in the living room where an enormous Christmas tree dominated the space, reaching nearly to the ceiling, and decorated in a coordinated theme of gold and cream. Beneath it lay piles of beautifully wrapped presents, arranged with the same precision my mother applied to everything in her life. It was our family tradition to open gifts on Christmas Eve, with the youngest opening first. This meant Natalie always had the privilege of starting the gift-giving ceremony, another small way the family dynamics played out in her favor. My father handed Natalie her first gift, a large box wrapped in shimmering gold paper with an elaborate bow. "This one's from your mother and me," he said, smiling broadly. Natalie carefully removed the wrapping paper, revealing a branded box from a high-end luggage company. Inside was a set of designer luggage, a large suitcase, a carry-on, and a matching leather travel bag. "Oh my God!" she gasped, running her hand over the buttery leather. "This is gorgeous. There's more," my mother said, excitedly handing her a thick envelope. Natalie opened it and pulled out a folder containing what appeared to be travel documents. Her eyes widened as she flipped through the pages. "Is this for real?" she asked, looking up at our parents in disbelief. My father nodded proudly. "A 3-week European tour. First-class flights, 5-star hotels, private guides in each city. Paris, Rome, Barcelona, Vienna, and London. You've worked so hard this year, you deserve a proper vacation." My mother moved to sit beside Natalie, putting an arm around her shoulders. "You are the pride of our family," she declared, her voice thick with emotion. "We wanted to give you something special to show how proud we are of everything you've accomplished." Natalie's eyes filled with tears as she hugged our parents. "This is incredible. I don't know what to say." I watched the scene unfold with a familiar ache in my chest. The gift was undeniably generous, but it was the words that accompanied it that cut deepest. The pride of our family. Had my parents ever expressed similar sentiment about me? Had they ever looked at me with that same mixture of adoration and approval? I knew the answer. They hadn't. Not when I graduated with honors, not when I received my teaching certification, not when I was recognized for my work with struggling students. In their eyes, I had never done anything worthy of being their pride. As Natalie continued opening more gifts, expensive jewelry from Marcus designer clothes from our aunt and uncle, I tried to quiet the voice in my head, comparing her pile of presents to what I anticipated would be my much more modest collection. Finally, it was my turn. My father reached under the tree and handed me a small, poorly wrapped package. The paper was creased and taped haphazardly, nothing like the pristine wrapping on Natalie's gifts. "This one's special," he said with a strange smile that immediately put me on edge. "Your mother and I put a lot of thought into it." The room fell oddly quiet as I unwrapped the package. Inside was a collection of used cleaning supplies, a worn scrub brush, a half-empty bottle of generic cleaner, a faded sponge, and a plastic name tag that read "Housekeeper" in bold letters. I stared at the items in confusion, not comprehending what I was seeing. Was this some kind of mistake? My father burst into laughter. "This is enough for you," he said between chuckles. "Someone needs to clean up after your sister's success." My mother joined in the laughter. "We thought it was appropriate since you're so practical, Celia. Not everyone can be a doctor or an investment banker." Even Marcus smirked, though he had the decency to try to hide it behind his hand. Natalie gave an uncomfortable giggle, glancing at me with what might have been a flicker of sympathy before joining the family amusement. I sat frozen, the gift, on my lap, as my family laughed at what they clearly thought was a hilarious joke. But in that moment, something crystallized for me. This wasn't just a thoughtless gag gift. This was a perfect encapsulation of how they saw me, as less than as someone whose purpose was to support and clean up after the important members of the family, as someone who didn't deserve the same respect or consideration as my siblings. I had expected to feel hurt, to feel the familiar sting of rejection and disappointment. But instead, I felt oddly calm, as if I was observing the scene from a distance. For the first time, I saw my family with perfect clarity. Not as the people I wished they were, but as the people they truly were. I carefully placed the cleaning supplies back in the box and set it aside. Then I stood up, my movements deliberate and controlled. "Celia?" My mother's laughter faded as she noticed my expression. "There are more gifts for you under the tree, real ones. This was just a little joke." My father waved dismissively. "Don't be so sensitive. We got you proper presents, too." Indeed, there were several more packages with my name on them, professionally wrapped like Natalie's, likely containing the obligatory sweater or generic perfume set they typically gave me. Gifts selected with minimal thought and zero insight into who I actually was. But I didn't reach for them. Instead, I simply said, "Excuse me for a moment," and walked out of the room with as much dignity as I could muster. No one tried to stop me. I doubt they even realized what was happening. They probably assumed I was upset and needed a moment to collect myself before returning to open my real gifts and continue playing my assigned role in the family. They had no idea that I was about to change the script entirely. I walked up the curved staircase to the guest room where I was staying, my mind surprisingly clear. Years of therapy had prepared me for this moment, though I hadn't realized it until now. All those sessions discussing boundaries, self-worth, and toxic family dynamics had planted seeds that were finally bearing fruit. As I entered the guest room, never my room, even though I'd stayed in it dozens of times over the years, I looked around at the generic decor. Unlike my siblings, I had no childhood memorabilia preserved here, no photos on the walls, no indication that I had ever been a part of this family. It was as if I had been erased, or perhaps had never fully existed in this house at all. I sat on the edge of the bed and allowed myself to really feel what had just happened downstairs. The joke gift hadn't been a momentary lapse in judgment or a misguided attempt at humor. It was the culmination of a lifetime of similar messages. You are less. You are not enough. You are here to serve, not to shine. Memories flooded through me, each one a piece of evidence in the case against staying 1 minute longer in this house. My 8th birthday party canceled because Natalie had come down with a mild cold, while my 16th birthday had been completely forgotten amidst preparations for Natalie's dance recital. My high school art show, where I'd won first place, attended only by my elderly art teacher because my parents were at one of Marcus's baseball games. The day I received my college acceptance letter, met with distracted congratulations and immediately overshadowed by news of Natalie making the honor roll in high school. My college graduation dinner, where my father had spent the entire meal on the phone discussing a patient and my mother had criticized my choice of dress as too attention-seeking. My first apartment, which I'd furnished and decorated entirely on my own because my parents were too busy helping Natalie move into her dorm at Harvard. My first teaching award, the ceremony my parents couldn't attend because they had tickets to the symphony on the same night. Each memory was a brick in the wall that had always separated me from genuine connection with my family. And tonight, with that ridiculous housekeeper name tag, they had finally completed the wall. There was no breaking through, no hope for change, no possibility that they would ever see me as worthy of the same love and respect they gave so freely to my siblings. The realization was both painful and liberating. Painful because it meant accepting that the loving, supportive family I had always longed for would never exist. Liberating because it freed me from the endless cycle of trying, failing, and trying again to earn their approval. I stood up and pulled my suitcase from the closet. With methodical calm, I began packing my belongings. Not just the overnight items I'd brought for Christmas, but everything I kept at my parents' house. The few childhood mementos stored in the attic, the extra clothes I sometimes left here, the books that had once been mine. As I packed, I texted Taylor. The joke's finally on me. Cleaning supplies for Christmas while Natalie got a European vacation. I'm leaving. Can I crash with you tonight? Her response was immediate. OMG, that's horrible. Of course you can stay. Want me to come get you? No, I replied. I need to do this on my own. We'll explain everything later. I continued packing, surprised by how little of myself actually remained in this house. It was as if I had been gradually removing pieces of my identity for years, instinctively preparing for this moment of final separation. Before zipping my suitcase, I wrote a brief note on the monogrammed stationery my mother kept in every guest room. I won't be in contact for a while. I need time to reevaluate what family means to me. Please don't try to reach me. I'll contact you when I'm ready. Celia. I placed the note on the perfectly made bed and took one last look around the room. My eyes caught on a small photo frame on the dresser, the only personal touch in the otherwise anonymous space. It was a picture of me with my late grandmother, my father's mother, who had passed away when I was in college. She had been the one person in the family who had seemed to truly see and value me. You have a beautiful heart, Celia, she had told me once. Never let anyone convince you that it's not enough. I picked up the frame and added it to my suitcase. Then I quietly made my way down the back staircase, hoping to leave without another confrontation. But as I reached the hallway leading to the kitchen and the rear exit, Natalie appeared from the dining room, a glass of wine in her hand. Celia, she said, her eyes widening at the sight of my suitcase. What are you doing? I took a deep breath. I'm leaving. Because of the gift. Come on, it was just a joke. You know how Dad is with his weird sense of humor. I looked at my sister, really looked at her. Behind the perfect exterior, I saw uncertainty in her eyes, maybe even guilt. It wasn't just a joke, Natalie. It was cruel. And it wasn't just tonight. It's been my entire life being treated like I'm worth less than you and Marcus. Being the butt of the joke, the afterthought, the one who's expected to smile and take it because that's just how family is. Well, I'm done. Natalie set down her wine glass. You're overreacting. It was a stupid gag gift. They got you real presents, too. That's not the point, I said, my voice steady. The point is that they thought it was okay to humiliate me in front of everyone. The point is that in 32 years, they have never once made me feel like I was enough. The point is that I deserve better than this, and I'm finally doing something about it. A flicker of something passed across Natalie's face. Recognition, perhaps, or the first genuine understanding of how our family dynamic had affected me. Where will you go? She asked, her voice smaller now. I have friends who actually respect me, I replied. I'll be fine. Natalie reached out as if to stop me. Wait, maybe we can talk about this. I'm sure if you explain to Mom and Dad how you feel. I shook my head. I've tried that, Natalie, for years. They don't listen because they don't want to hear it. And honestly, I'm not sure you do either. She flinched at that. That's not fair. I love you, Celia. Maybe you do, I acknowledged. But you've been complicit in this dynamic our whole lives. You've benefited from being the favorite, and you've never once stood up for me when they've put me down. Natalie didn't deny it. She couldn't. I'm not saying this is goodbye forever, I continued. But I need space. I need time to figure out who I am outside of this family that has always made me feel like I'm not enough. For a moment, I thought she might try to stop me again. But instead, she stepped aside. Be safe, she said quietly. I nodded and continued down the hallway through the kitchen where the catering staff was cleaning up and out the back door into the cold December night. The snow was falling more heavily now, and I paused for a moment to look back at the house all lit up and picture-perfect from the outside. Then I walked to my car, loaded my suitcase, and drove away from the life where I had always been less than toward the possibility of becoming enough. I checked into a hotel that night, a modest chain hotel that was one of the few places open on Christmas Eve. The lobby was decorated with a small artificial tree and generic holiday decorations, but it felt more welcoming than the elaborate Christmas display I had just left behind. The young woman at the front desk looked surprised to see a guest checking in so late on Christmas Eve, but she was professionally cheerful. Just you tonight? She asked as she processed my credit card. Just me, I confirmed, and for the first time, those words didn't feel lonely. They felt like freedom. My room was clean and anonymous with none of the weight of history and expectation that had filled every corner of my parents' house. I sat on the edge of the bed, suddenly exhausted, but oddly at peace. I checked my phone to find a flurry of text messages from Taylor asking if I was okay, and when I would arrive at her place. I replied that I had decided to get a hotel room for the night and would see her tomorrow. Are you sure? She texted back. No one should be alone on Christmas Eve. I'm not alone, I wrote. I'm with myself, and for once, that feels like enough. I ordered room service, an overpriced burger and fries that arrived lukewarm but tasted like the most satisfying meal I'd had in years. I ate sitting cross-legged on the bed, watching a cheesy Christmas movie on the hotel TV. No one judging my food choices or my taste in entertainment. It should have been a sad scene. A woman alone in a hotel room on Christmas Eve, estranged from her family. But instead, it felt like the first truly peaceful Christmas I could remember. There was no tension knotting my shoulders, no anxiety about saying or doing the wrong thing, no constant comparison to my more favored siblings. As I drifted off to sleep that night, I realized that walking out of my parents' house had been the first step in a journey I had needed to take for a very long time. It wasn't just about one insulting gift or one difficult Christmas. It was about reclaiming my worth from people who had never recognized it in the first place. The next morning, Christmas Day, I woke early and made a plan. I would stay at the hotel for a few more days, using the time to find a new apartment, preferably in a different part of the city where I was less likely to run into my family. I had some savings that could cover a security deposit and first month's rent, and my teaching job provided enough income for me to live modestly but comfortably on my own. I texted Taylor and asked if she could meet me for coffee. She arrived at the hotel lobby an hour later, arms full of Christmas cookies and a small wrapped gift. I figured you might need some Christmas cheer, she said, hugging me tightly. Over coffee, I told her everything. The joke gift, the years of feeling less than my decision to cut contact with my family. I'm proud of you, she said when I had finished. It takes guts to walk away from toxic relationships, even when they're with the people who are supposed to love you most. I keep waiting to feel guilty or to doubt my decision, I admitted. But all I feel is relief. Taylor nodded. That's your heart telling you you've made the right choice. Listen to it. With Taylor's help, I found a small apartment in a neighborhood across town from my parents' social circle. It was nothing fancy, a one-bedroom with a tiny kitchen and a view of the building next door. But it was mine, a space where I could exist without constantly being measured and found wanting. I took a week off from teaching, using some of my accumulated personal days to get settled in my new place and begin building the foundations of my independent life. The practical tasks: changing my phone number, creating a new email address, updating my address with the post office, gave me a sense of purpose and progress. As the days passed with no contact from my family, I began to wonder if they even missed me. Had they simply shrugged off my absence and continued their Christmas celebration without me? Had they opened the gifts I had left behind, those carefully selected presents that represented so many hours of thought and effort? Or had they remained untouched under the tree, as forgotten as I had often felt? I tried not to dwell on these questions. Instead, I focused on creating new routines and rediscovering parts of myself that had been suppressed in my efforts to gain my family's approval. I signed up for a pottery class, something I had always wanted to try but had never pursued because my mother had once commented that it was such a messy hobby. I bought clothes in bright colors that made me happy rather than the conservative styles my parents deemed appropriate. I tried new recipes, played music loudly in my apartment, and slowly began to understand what it meant to live for myself rather than for others' approval. When the new semester started in January, I returned to my classroom with renewed energy and focus. My principal noticed the change immediately. "You seem different, Celia," she remarked during our first staff meeting of the year. "More present somehow." I smiled. "I've made some changes in my personal life. Good ones." Encouraged by her positive response, I finally presented a proposal I had been hesitant to share: an innovative reading program for struggling students that I had developed over the past year, but had kept to myself, fearing criticism. "This is excellent work," my principal said after reviewing my materials. "Let's implement it this semester and track the results. If it's as effective as I think it will be, we should present it at the district conference in the spring." The validation was sweet, but what meant more was the realization that I had always had valuable ideas and contributions to make. The only thing holding me back had been my own insecurity, carefully cultivated by years of family conditioning. As January turned to February, I began to build deeper connections with friends I had previously kept at arm's length, afraid that letting people get too close would lead to the same rejection I experienced at home. Taylor introduced me to her wider circle, and I found myself welcomed into a community of supportive, interesting people who seemed to genuinely enjoy my company. I tried new hobbies, joined a book club, and even went on a few dates, something I had rarely done before, convinced as I was that no one would choose me when there were so many more attractive, successful, interesting women in the world. It was a revelation to discover that there were people who found me engaging, attractive, and worth getting to know. The financial adjustment was challenging at times. Without the occasional family contribution to my expenses, a birthday check here, help with car repairs there, I had to budget more carefully. But there was pride in managing on my own, in knowing that every bill paid and every small luxury afforded came from my own efforts. With each passing day, my confidence grew. The constant voice of doubt and self-criticism that had been my internal companion for so long began to quiet, replaced by a growing appreciation for my own strengths and capabilities. And then, just as I was finding my footing in this new self-determined life, my family finally realized I was serious about my departure. The first message came from Natalie a week after Christmas, a casual text asking where I was staying and when I would be over my tantrum. I didn't respond. 3 days later, another text from Natalie, this one with a slightly different tone. "Mom and Dad are asking about you. Are you okay?" Again, I chose silence. I wasn't ready to engage, to be pulled back into the family dynamic that had caused me so much pain. Then came emails from my mother, progressing from mildly annoyed, "This silent treatment is very immature, Celia," to concerned, "We're starting to worry about you," to angry, "Your behavior is causing unnecessary stress for the entire family." My father's communication style was more direct. Voicemails in his authoritative surgeon's voice. "Celia, this has gone on long enough. Call your mother. She's upset." And later, "This is ridiculous, Celia. You're acting like a child. Whatever point you're trying to make has been made. It's time to move on." I listened to each message, read each email and text, but maintained my silence. Their words revealed so much about how they viewed me, as someone who had no right to set boundaries, whose feelings were tantrums, whose absence was an inconvenience rather than a loss. 2 weeks after Christmas, the messages took on a more desperate tone. My mother's emails became pleading, "Please just let us know you're safe. Whatever you're upset about, we can talk about it." My father's voicemails lost their commanding edge. "Celia, your mother is beside herself with worry. Just a quick call to let us know you're all right. That's all we're asking." Even Marcus, who rarely communicated with me directly, sent a text. "The parents are freaking out. What's going on?" I finally sent a brief response to Marcus. "I'm taking some space from the family. I'm safe and well. That's all I'm willing to share right now." His reply came quickly. "This is about the cleaning supplies thing. It was just a joke." I didn't bother responding to that. If he couldn't see the problem, there was nothing I could say to make him understand. The turning point came when my parents showed up at my school during lunch break. The front office called to let me know I had visitors, and I walked into the reception area to find my mother and father looking distinctly out of place among the children's artwork and motivational posters. My mother rushed toward me. "Celia, thank God you're all right. Why haven't you answered our calls? We've been worried sick." I kept my voice calm and professional, aware of the school secretary pretending not to listen. "I'm fine, as you can see. I told you in my note that I needed time without contact. I would appreciate it if you would respect that." My father frowned. "We're your parents, Celia. You can't just cut us off without explanation." "I explained in my note that I needed time to reevaluate what family means to me," I replied. "That hasn't changed." "Is this about Christmas?" my mother asked, lowering her voice. "If you didn't like your gifts, you could have just said so. There was no need for this dramatic exit." I almost laughed at the absurdity of her perception. "This isn't about gifts, Mom. It's about 32 years of being treated as less valuable than my siblings. It's about being the family joke. It's about never being enough no matter what I do." My father looked genuinely confused. "What are you talking about? We've always treated all our children the same." This time I did laugh, a short, incredulous sound. "If you truly believe that, then we have even less to talk about than I thought." The school bell rang, signaling the end of lunch period. "I need to get back to my students," I said. "Please don't come to my workplace again. It's unprofessional and disruptive." "But where are you staying?" my mother pressed. "Your landlord said you moved out of your apartment." At the fact that they had gone to my former apartment building both surprised and disturbed me. "That's not your concern," I said. "I'm an adult with my own life. When and if I'm ready to be in contact, I'll reach out." As I turned to leave, my father called after me. "This isn't right, Celia. Families don't just walk away from each other." I paused and looked back at him. "Sometimes they do, when staying hurts more than leaving." After they left the school, Secretary gave me a sympathetic look. "Family trouble?" I nodded, not elaborating. "Been there," she said simply. "Sometimes the only way they hear you is when you stop talking." That afternoon, I received a call from a police officer. My parents, it seemed, had filed a missing persons report despite having just seen me at school. "I need to verify that you're safe and have left voluntarily." the officer explained when we met at a coffee shop near my new apartment. Your parents are claiming they're concerned about your mental health. I showed him my note, explained the Christmas incident and the years of emotional neglect that had preceded it, and assured him that I was perfectly stable and had chosen to distance myself from a toxic family situation. The officer, a kind-faced man in his 40s, nodded understandingly. Family estrangement is more common than people think, he said. I'll report that you're safe and have chosen to limit contact. That should put an end to the official concern, though I can't stop them from trying to contact you privately. I understand, I said. Thank you for being respectful about this. Everyone has the right to set boundaries, he replied. Even with family, especially with family sometimes. That evening, I received an email from my mother with a different tone entirely. We may have gone too far with our Christmas joke, she wrote. It was thoughtless and hurtful, and we should have considered your feelings. Please come home so we can talk about this as a family. It was the closest thing to an apology I had ever received from my mother, but it still missed the point entirely. This wasn't about one joke at Christmas. It was about a lifetime of similar incidents, a pattern of behavior that had consistently undermined my sense of worth and belonging. Natalie's message came next, a long text that seemed genuinely remorseful. I never realized how much it hurt you being treated differently. I guess I never wanted to see it because it would mean acknowledging my part in it. I'm sorry, Celia. Really sorry. When you're ready, I'd like to talk. Just the two of us. I sat with these messages for several days considering how or if to respond. I didn't want to be pulled back into the same dysfunctional patterns, but I also recognized the possibility that this rupture might lead to meaningful change, if not in my parents, then perhaps in my relationship with Natalie. Finally, I sent a brief reply to my mother. I am safe, but need space. Please respect that. To Natalie, I wrote more. Thank you for your apology. I need time to process everything, but when I'm ready, I'll be in touch. Setting these boundaries was terrifying, but also empowering. For perhaps the first time in my life, I was determining the terms of my family relationships rather than accepting whatever scraps of attention and affection they chose to offer. 3 months passed a quarter of a year in which I lived entirely on my own terms. Winter gave way to spring, and with the changing season came a sense of renewal and growth in my own life. My innovative reading program was showing remarkable results with struggling students making significant progress. My principal had nominated me for a district-wide teaching award, and I had been asked to present my methodology at an educational conference in May. I had made new friends, developed new interests, and even started dating a kind, thoughtful man I had met at my pottery class. My small apartment had become a true home filled with books, plants, and artwork that reflected my personality rather than anyone else's expectations. I had also continued therapy, working through the deep-seated insecurities and patterns that had developed from years of family dynamics. Dr. Kaplan had been right. Family patterns don't change overnight, but I could change how I responded to them. And in doing so, I was gradually rewriting my own story. Throughout this time, messages from my family continued to arrive. My parents' communications oscillated between guilt-inducing pleas and stern demands for reconciliation. Marcus occasionally texted, usually at our parents' prompting, but it was Natalie's messages that showed the most evolution, becoming more reflective and less defensive as time passed. I've been thinking a lot about how we grew up, she wrote in one particularly thoughtful text. About how differently Mom and Dad treated us. I always knew I was the favorite, but I told myself it was because I was doing what they wanted, medicine like Dad. I never acknowledged how unfair it was to you, or how it must have felt to constantly be compared and found wanting. I'm starting to understand why you needed to step away. After receiving several messages in this vein, I finally agreed to meet Natalie for coffee at a neutral location, a cafe halfway between my new apartment and the hospital where she worked. I arrived early, choosing a table near the exit, a small part of me still preparing for disappointment and the potential need for a quick departure. Natalie arrived precisely on time, looking less polished than usual in scrubs and a ponytail clearly coming straight from a shift. She hesitated when she saw me as if unsure of her welcome. "It's good to see you," she said as she sat down across from me. "You look different. Good different." "I feel different," I replied. "Happier. More myself." We ordered coffee, and for a few minutes we engaged in careful small talk about the weather, my new apartment, her work at the hospital. Then she took a deep breath. "I owe you a real apology," she said. "Not just for Christmas, but for everything. For never standing up for you when Mom and Dad played favorites. For going along with it because it benefited me. For sometimes even joining in because it was easier than risking my own position in the family." I nodded, appreciating her directness. "Why now? What's changed?" Natalie looked down at her coffee. "Honestly, seeing you walk away made me realize how bad things must have been for you. And once I started really thinking about it, I couldn't stop seeing all the little ways they elevated me at your expense. It was so constant that it was almost invisible, like the air we breathed." "Exactly," I said, feeling a surge of validation. "So normal that I thought I was crazy for being hurt by it." "You weren't crazy," she said firmly. "They were wrong. We were all wrong." We talked for nearly 2 hours, delving into childhood memories, family patterns, and the complex web of expectations and roles that had defined our relationship. For the first time, I felt like Natalie was really seeing me, not as her less successful sister or as a supporting character in her story, but as a whole person with my own valid experiences and feelings. "Mom and Dad want to see you," she said eventually. "They're struggling to understand why you're still staying away." I sighed. Have they actually acknowledged what they did wrong? Not just the Christmas joke, but the years of favoritism and dismissal. Natalie hesitated. "They're trying in their way. Mom keeps saying she never meant to make you feel less loved. Dad is having a harder time. He doesn't really do emotional introspection." "I'm not ready to see them yet," I said. "Maybe someday, but not until I'm confident I can maintain my boundaries and not fall back into old patterns." Natalie nodded. "I understand. I'll tell them you're doing well but need more time. And Celia, I'd like us to keep talking, to try to build something new between us, something healthier, if you're willing." I considered her request. The easy thing would be to maintain the distance to protect myself from the possibility of further hurt. But the hardest parts of growth often come from taking carefully considered risks. "I'd like that," I said finally, slowly on neutral ground with clear boundaries. "But yes, I'd like to try." As we parted ways that day, I felt a mixture of hope and caution. One conversation couldn't undo decades of dysfunctional family dynamics, but it was a start, a small seed of possibility that with time and care might grow into something meaningful. Over the next few weeks, Natalie and I continued to meet occasionally for coffee or lunch. Each conversation peeled back another layer of our shared history, allowing us to see each other more clearly and to begin building a relationship based on mutual respect rather than the assigned roles of our childhood. Through Natalie, my parents continued to request a meeting. After discussing it thoroughly with Dr. Kaplan, I finally agreed to see them, but on my terms, in a public place for a limited time with Taylor waiting nearby in case I needed support. We met at a restaurant downtown, neutral territory, where the public setting would hopefully discourage any dramatic scenes. I arrived early, choosing a table where I could see the entrance, a small act of control that helped calm my nerves. My parents entered together, my mother scanning the restaurant anxiously until she spotted me. They looked older somehow, as if the past 3 months had aged them beyond their actual time. "Celia," my mother said as they reached the table, her voice catching. She moved as if to hug me, then stopped herself, respecting the physical distance I had maintained by not standing to greet them. My father nodded stiffly. "You look well," he said, an observation rather than a compliment. The initial conversation was awkward, filled with careful pleasantries and updates about their health. Marcus's latest business venture, the weather. It felt like talking to acquaintances rather than the people who had raised me. Finally, my mother broke the facade. "We've missed you, Celia. The house feels empty without you." I met her gaze steadily. "I haven't lived in that house for years, Mom." "You know what I mean," she said. "Family gatherings, Sunday dinners, your presence." Was my presence really valued? I asked quietly. Or was it just expected? My father frowned. "Of course we valued your presence. You're our daughter." "Being your daughter and being valued are not the same thing," I replied. I spent my entire life feeling like I was less important, less accomplished, less worthy of attention and respect than Marcus and Natalie. The Christmas gift was just the final straw. "It was a thoughtless joke," my mother admitted. "We never meant to hurt you so deeply." "It wasn't just the joke," I explained. "It was what the joke revealed, that after 32 years, you still see me as someone whose purpose is to support others rather than to shine in my own right. Someone who should be grateful for cleaning supplies, while Natalie gets a European vacation and the title of the pride of our family." My father shifted uncomfortably. "We've always been proud of you too, Celia." "When?" I challenged him. "When have you ever said that to me? When have you ever celebrated my achievements with the same enthusiasm you show for Natalie's or Marcus's? When have you ever made me feel like I was enough, just as I am?" He opened his mouth, then closed it again, unable to provide a specific example. My mother reached across the table, not quite touching my hand, but gesturing toward it. "We never realized you felt this way. We thought you were happy with your life choices, with teaching." "I am happy with my career," I said. "I love teaching. What I wasn't happy with was being made to feel like that career was somehow less valuable or prestigious than being a doctor or an investment banker. Like I was settling for less rather than choosing what fulfilled me." The conversation continued in this vein, difficult but necessary. My parents struggled to fully acknowledge the pattern of favoritism, often defaulting to, "we never meant to," or "we didn't realize," rather than truly owning their behavior. But there were moments of genuine connection, too, flashes of understanding, that gave me hope that perhaps with time and effort, we might build something new from the ashes of our old relationship. As our meal concluded, my father cleared his throat. "We would like you to come home, Celia, to be part of the family again." I looked at him steadily. I've never stopped being part of the family, Dad. But I've learned that I need to be part of it on terms that honor my worth and well-being. That means maintaining certain boundaries. "What kind of boundaries?" my mother asked, a note of worry in her voice. "No more comparisons to my siblings. No more diminishing comments about my career or life choices. No more expectations that I'll sacrifice my needs for family harmony. And a genuine effort to see and celebrate who I am, not who you wish I was." My parents exchanged glances, clearly finding these requirements challenging, but not impossible. "We can try," my mother said finally. "We want you back in our lives." It wasn't a perfect resolution. There was no dramatic moment of complete understanding or tearful reconciliation. But it was a beginning, a tentative first step toward a healthier relationship based on mutual respect rather than predetermined family roles. As I left the restaurant that day, I felt neither triumphant nor defeated, but somewhere in between. Cautiously hopeful, realistic about the challenges ahead, but committed to moving forward with clear eyes and firm boundaries. In the months that followed, our family dynamic continued to evolve. There were setbacks and difficult moments, old habits that proved hard to break. But there was progress too. Small gestures of genuine interest in my life, attempts to acknowledge and correct patterns of favoritism, moments of connection that felt authentic rather than obligatory. Today, a year after that fateful Christmas, I'm hosting my own holiday gathering in my apartment. It's small, but warm, filled with friends who value me exactly as I am. Natalie will be becoming our relationship now based on mutual respect and genuine affection, rather than competition and resentment. My parents have been invited for dessert, a limited engagement that allows for connection without overwhelming my carefully constructed boundaries. The cleaning supplies and housekeeper name tag that changed the course of my life are long gone, but the lesson they taught me remains sometimes the most valuable gift. Is the courage to walk away from those who cannot see your worth to create space for those who can, including, most importantly, yourself. Have you ever had to create boundaries with family who couldn't see your worth? Share your experience in the comments. If this story helped you feel less alone, please subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that. Walking away from toxicity isn't giving up. It's the first step to finding your true self. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember, sometimes the greatest gift you can give yourself is the courage to say, enough.